So we may have more people come on, we may not, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. Y'all had an extra week to work on this, and I hope that you were able to get your top quilted, well, your sandwich quilted. I'll admit I did not get completely finished. I did get about halfway. So I'm about right here, quilted down. And so we only have, well, 2 more things really, 2, 3, depends on how you look at it, to do. So you don't want to do this until after you're completely finished quilting, because I don't know if you noticed, but say you started on the right hand side and you quilted your way over here, then it kind of pushed the fabric. And there may have been like a fold in there that you hadn't found until you started quilting. So your fabric's going to move and it's going to push out and up, and or however it does. So you don't want to cut the excess until you're completely finished with the quilting. So when you are finished with all of your quilting and you've gone from top to bottom, side to side, however, then you're going to cut everything even with the top. So I'm just cutting what little bit of excess there is of the batting and the backing. And I'm not finished quilting mine all the way, so I'm just cutting the top part. Okay, because I'm not finished yet and it may still move a little bit. And I don't want to cut something too short. So you get it cut and it's real good and flush, all 3 of them. See, there's nothing sticking out there. It's good and flat. Okay. After you do that, you put it to the side, and then you're going to get your binding material. So that is I think it's 2.5 inch strips. Mine is the white glittery. That's what I have as my binding, but yours is different. You're going to need an iron for this, and wherever you have to iron. I have a wool mat. You can get a wool mat, and what it does, the heat from the iron goes down into the mat and then it comes back up. That's called something, but I don't know what it is. Do you know what it is, Sarah Kate?
I don't. Refractory?
I don't know.
Reflects it?
Something like that. But you can use, I have used a towel on the kitchen table. I've used just my bed. I've laid it on my bed and ironed it that way, an ironing board, of course. So just whatever you have, okay? And we're going to take this 2.5 inch strip and we're going to fold it in 2 and iron it all the way across. So you're just making sure the ends are flush right here. The ends line up, and you can use starch if you want to make it stay, because I mean that does help, especially with the binding. It helps for your fabric to stay the way that you iron it. It's a little less frustrating when it all stays in place the way that you want it to with this part. Okay, this is a little steam iron, and it gets really, really hot, and it works really well to keep my fabric in place without having to use starch, which you can also get. I don't know that it's starch, but it's something you can spray on your fabric to help it stay the way that you iron it. There's one really popular one, and it's just a couple dollars, and it's called Best Press. That's a really good one. Okay, so I just ironed it in half. Now, you may need to look at the drawing that I did to really be able to tell this next part, because it's a little bit complicated. So we have this fold here in the middle, and you can see right there the fold in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to fold both edges in just to meet that middle. So the easiest way for me to do that is fold one side in and iron it. Okay, and this is, I know it's hard to see because it's white. Okay, and then I'm folding the other side in. Okay, so it looks like that. And this is so that there's no rough edges on the outside of your quilt. This is going to be like the frame on the outside of your quilt. So it just, you need to make sure that there's no rough edges. There are other ways of doing a binding. This one to me is the easiest way. To take a little bit of time to do the ironing. And I found for me, it's the easiest way to do it. If there's another way that you have learned to do it, or someone who's working with you or helping you knows how to do it, give their way a try too, because for everybody, the way we do these things with quilting is different. We all have our own way that we like to do things. So if quilting is something that you find you've really enjoyed doing and you want to do more projects in the future, experiment and see, research and find different ways of doing things. Try different ways of doing things to find the way that you like to do it. Because what's easy for me may not be easy for you, and the other way around. Okay, almost got this one.
That sparkly fabric looks like snow, like,
Yes.
when sun hits it.
That's why I picked it. And particularly because in this charm pack, this gray one reminds me of dark.
Mhm.
And then this reminded me of snow at night when it's glittering at nighttime.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have, it's turned inwards like this, right? Okay, now we're just gonna, where that first fold is, we're just gonna fold it like that. It may not stay that way, but that's how it's gonna be. Just this, I think that's, I'm not sure if that's a 1/4 inch. It's about a 1/4 inch thick. And that's what's gonna wrap around our quilt, all around the outside. But before we attach that to our quilt, this like, it's like fuzzy right here, right? And that is the selvage. We're gonna cut that off. We don't want that. We don't want that on there, so we'll cut it off. I have 2 pieces made here. So I can show you guys. You wouldn't have to wait for me to iron 2 of these. So after you get all 4, you should have 4 of these strips. After you get all 4 of them ironed, you are going to take them to this part right here, this point where the insides are folded in, okay, like that, and you're going to sew them together, back to back. So not the side with the folds, but just the solid side. You're going to take solid side to solid side, put them together, and then you're going to sew them. Okay, if I can find my needle there, yes. Okay, so I've got my needle already knotted, and I'm just going to sew these 2 together.
Where are you starting to sew them? In that corner?
I'm starting just like you would when you're sewing a square together. You're starting on one side. I always start on the right side and go left, starting on the back and about a 1/4 inch from the edge. This fabric with the glitter is a little bit thicker than normal fabric. So I'm going to have to go one stitch at a time.
So you're making them into one big long one.
Yep. So you're taking the 4 strips, ironing them, and then sewing them together into one big long continuous strip. So and that's so once you put this binding on there, it'll be seamless. There won't be any edges to worry about. It'll just be very seamless. Some people like a bigger binding. So that's another thing you can do differently. You could cut 3.5 inches instead of 2.5 inches for the binding. It just depends on what you like. Okay, so I go all the way over. I went all the way across. I'm just going to tie a knot like I normally would if I were just sewing 2 squares together. I'm going to double knot it. So I did 1 knot and I'm just doing another one. Okay. And then I always just go ahead and knot this so it'll be ready for me to use it in a minute. So we'll pretend that this is all 4 of the strips sewn together and ready to go. Okay, your quilt is all quilted and you've got all your edges cut off so it's flush. You do not want to start all the way in the corner. You don't want to start here. You want to move over just a little bit from the edge. So where this fold is, you're going to fold this over top the edge of your quilt. So you're putting one side on the back and then flipping it over the front. So we have this here. I'm going to lay that on top of it and then flip it over. Okay, now this you can use your clips or you can use pins, either one, to hold it in place. If you have enough clips or if you have enough pins, I would just go across. I wouldn't do it all the way around because as you're sewing, it's going to move. So you'll want to just work with one side at a time. Just make sure that everything is pulled. It's in there tightly. This is stretched out. This is stretched to where it's not going to bulk up in there. Just going to put a few clips on there. And if you want to just work with the 3 clips, you can do that and just work a little at a time. Okay. So now you're just going to sew that to your quilt. I sew right to left, so I'm going to turn it over. Okay, so I'm going to work from the back. This is the front and here's the back. I'm going to work from the back. And you're going to put the needle through right along the bottom. So in this case, it's not going to be a whole 1/4 inch. It's going to be really close to the edge is where you're going to make your stitches. And you just got to be very careful when you're poking it through and pay attention to where the needle comes out on the other side. Because you want it to be the same distance as on the back. I don't know if you can see that where it's so light or the fabric is so light, but it's really close to the edge. Okay, so with this, I'm gonna call it slow stitching because you can't like bundle it up and do like that. You'll have to do 1 stitch at a time. So you're pushing through the front, making sure that the needle comes out in the right place.
This is where a thimble is handy too, right?
Yes, the thimble is handy for this because you're having to, especially if your binding is a thick material, you're having to push really hard to push that through there. So you're putting a lot of force, and you really don't want that to go through your finger. And I don't know about you guys, but my thumb gets really sore. You can see how red it is because I've been sewing today from pushing that needle, right? So that's when you can use the thimble to help with that. Okay, so now I've got this sewed. Then I would just get my clip, my extra clip, and just move on down. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You don't have to move on to that. You just lay this aside and not worry about it until you get there by just moving on down. I tend to, when I get into a project, I don't want to stop. So I like a constant flow, right? So if I left just the 2 on there, then there would be a stopping point right there. So if I take the one I don't need and I keep moving it, it's like a constant flow. It's interesting how everybody works in different ways. So you do want these stitches to be pretty close together because your quilt is pretty solid. There's a lot of stitches in here, and you've got it quilted and it's held together really good. So over the years, when you're washing this, or your grandchildren or nieces and nephews or whoever, your quilt is passed down to washes it over and over and over. Your binding is probably going to be the thing that is most likely to come loose over time. So
I didn't realize that. Think about that.
yeah, so you just want to make sure that you get these stitches pretty close together. If you do really big, thick stitches that are big and far away from one another, then it's more likely to come loose. So just maybe want to put a little bit more love and care and time into the binding, because the binding kind of holds the whole thing together. Kind of like some family members do, I think. And then you'll do that all the way around your quilt. One of my favorite things when I finish a quilt is throwing it in the washer and dryer for the first time and seeing how it's changed when I get it out. Because it does. Now, listen, a hand quilted blanket is so much softer already than a machine quilted, because our hands have touched it and you've done this, right? So you can hold it and you've held it and worked it and you've made it soft already. A machine quilted quilt isn't like that. It's not soft, it's kind of stiff. Crispy, that's the word. Yeah. Sir Kate has the best words. So when I finish a quilt, I'm so excited, so excited. The first thing I want to do is throw it in the washer and dryer, because when you do that, your fabric will kind of not really shrink, but it'll kind of shrink up a little bit and get a little bit wrinkly, and
Feel like a real quilt.
it feels like a real quilt. It does. It changes the way that it looks and everything.
Do you have suggestions for how to wash a quilt?
I wash my quilts just with, like I normally do all my other stuff. I just wash it and
Yeah.
whatever laundry detergent I have or make, or throw it in the dryer.
They're sturdy. They're pretty sturdy, aren't they?
They are,
They
yeah.
don't fall apart.
Nope. I mean, over many years, they may start to come apart at the seams, but you guys have learned how to make a whole quilt. So I know you will know when the time comes, when there's, a piece that might need to be mended, you'll know how to mend it. Okay, so I won't go all the way across there, but you'll see how it just comes together. And when your whole quilt is framed, I'm going to say framed, binded.
I like that.
And we're going to pretend that this end has come all the way back around. Okay, this is the end. It's come back around. I do need to tell you how to turn a corner. I need to do that. When you get to a corner, sew it all the way to the corner. All the way to the corner. And I'm going to clip that there and pretend that we have it sewn. Okay. You're going to hold it with your fingers right here on your corner. And then you're going to pull this fabric down in that direction where it's going to go. Okay. So it looks like this. It looks like this on the side that you're moving towards. It's like an arrow. Okay. And then you're going to take your other two fingers right here and fold and pinch it right there. And then you'll want to clip it too. Clip it in place. Okay. So, and that's what it'll look like. You'll sew stitches all right here. Okay, so you'll already have stitches here, but you'll put stitches all across that line, and then you'll just start sewing your binding down this direction. So that's how you do a corner. That's what it look like there. Well, a little closer, like that. All right, so you have turned your last corner up here. You're at the end of your strip. You got it sewn all the way to here, okay? And you folded it over, and you've got your line here that is sewn, okay? You're not going to sew this just right on top of it like that, because this right here is going to be a rough edge. So you just need to maybe iron, maybe not, but you just need to tuck this edge in. Okay, so you're just gonna, just a tiny little bit, you're gonna tuck it in so that that is not a rough edge. That's, a fold that ends up right here on top of this other one. So you're gonna end with a fold. All right, and then you're going to sew right along that line. Right along that, so that does not come loose. You'll make sure that you do really small stitches, and that's good and sewn together. And that is it. You are done with your quilt. Until you throw it in the washer and dryer. And then you'll be really done with your quilt.
Until you sleep under it.
Yes,
Then you're ready
that's
to-
the next part. And then whatever else you do, enjoy doing with your quilt, read books, snuggled up with it, whatever.
Sleep with your puppy dog, kitty cat with it.
Yeah. So many different, so much goodness in making a quilt. And it being something that you made, right? You learned something and you made it yourself from nothing, from
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. So I hope that you've had fun. I hope that you've learned some things that you can use in the future with mending things or making things or whatever it is that you want to do. And so this is our last class, right?
It is.
It's our last class, but I want you to know that I'm always, always available. You can find me on Facebook. You have my email that Sarah Kate sent. But I'm on Facebook. I'm anywhere. You can reach me if you have any questions anytime in the future. Just say, hey, remember me? I took a sewing class and I have a question, or I want to talk about sewing or whatever. I'm always there. So I love talking about sewing and teaching people how to sew. So I'll be here, and I had fun with you guys. So thank you for coming to this class and showing up and doing the quilt. And I'm so proud of you. Hopefully, Sarah Kate will get pictures
Yes, yes.
of everyone's quilt, and I can see what you've done because I've not got to see your all's progress and what
Yeah.
you've done. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
that.
Allie, do you have any questions? Let us know if you have any questions before we log off. I know Delia she told me her mom messaged her, says she was on her binding.
Mm,
So she's done. I know Nevaeh was really close to being done. Maddox is really close to being done.
great.
Yeah.
Very good. I think there was a text, not a text message, y'all. I think I'm old.
Allie says, thank you so much. I love this class. Thanks,
Okay.
Allie.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. I had fun. I hope you did too.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Allie.
Bye.